Yes, the new Corvette is coming to Imsa in a big way. Earlier this year, Corvette revealed their new Z06 GT3.R for the whole world to see. And now, as the off-season approaches, we know the teams that are going to be running them next year. Let's head to the track and talk about it. Over the past 25 years, Corvette has surpassed 125 victories around the world. That includes 4 Rolex 24 wins and 9 class victories at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. Without a doubt, they have been one of the most successful GT manufacturers in the world. But currently in Imsa, they are racing a modified GTE car, or GTLM spec car, to meet the GT3 regulations. But that will change in 2024 with Corvette's new purpose-built GT3 entry. The Chevrolet Corvette Z06 GT3.R will hit the Imsa grid for the first time at the 2024 Rolex. It will also compete in various other championships such as the WEC and GT World Challenge America. Now, earlier this year, the car was launched to the public at Sebring, and as of around the time of the sale in 6 Hours of the Glen, the car has amassed 5,500 miles of testing so far. And not all of this testing has been done in the US either, with extensive testing also taking place in Europe. Now, testing is not the only news to emerge about this car, as it has been announced that 8 cars will be competing in the various series around the world. Now, for those 8 cars, of course, you need teams to run them, and the news is starting to trickle out on just who those teams are. In late June, Corvette Racing by Pratt Miller Motorsports announced that they would be running the 2 Corvette Racing sort of factory GTD Pro efforts in Imsa, and they'll be using a to-be-determined stable of drivers. Now, this is a huge change for Pratt Miller. Obviously, they're going from full factory status to just a factory-supported team now, but there are some positives for them as well, as this is going to allow them to seek out some other commercial partners. And even though the liveries, since they are still very much the factory-supported Corvette program, the liveries aren't going to change all that much, but we might see some additional sponsorship on the cars. Now, this change from a full factory team status to factory-supported is kind of the norm in sports car racing right now, with recent teams such as Porsche in the GTLM class also doing something similar to this, just moving teams to a factory-supported status as opposed to having a full factory outfit. And while Pratt Miller has been announced to run the GTD Pro program in Imsa, it has also been announced that TF Sport in the WEC will be switching from Aston Martins to run the Corvettes in the WEC next year. Now, when I was at the track, it hadn't been announced yet who the customer GTD team would be. However, the customer team that will be running the final 2 entries in Imsa has been unveiled as AWA. Now, AWA may not exactly be a household name for many fans, but the Canadian team has actually been racing in Imsa for a number of years now. Currently, the team fields 2 Duquesne entries in the LMP3 class of the WeatherTech Championship. However, despite only competing in the WeatherTech Championship for the past couple of years, the team is no stranger to GT racing. Prior to making the step up to the LMP3 class, they've competed in the GS class of the Michelin Pilot Challenge, which they started racing in 2018, and since then have raced the McLaren, the Porsche, as well as the Ford Mustang in that category. Now, of course, this year, Imsa announced that the LMP3 class was going to be no more next year, and the only class where you'd be able to run your LMP3 machinery would be in the VP Racing Fuel Sports Car Challenge. AWA is one of the current LMP3 teams that have assessed their options, and instead of making the jump up to the LMP2 class, they instead opted to go for a 2-car GTD effort, which they announced earlier this summer. Now, at the time, they didn't mention what manufacturer they'd be going with. I think I, in fact, might have mentioned the Ford Mustang, given the fact that AWA is a Toronto-based team, and Multimatic, who's going to be building the Mustang, are also based in Toronto. But we now know that they are going to be the customer racing entries for Corvette. This announcement brings the total number of Corvettes that will be racing in Imsa next year to 4, which, based on everything that I've looked at, this is the highest number of full season Corvette entries in Imsa since at least the merger. Now, with the team set to compete with their 2-car Corvette entry in the GTD class next year, it opens up an interesting avenue for the team to potentially get to Le Mans. The team has already announced that they intend to compete for the Bob Aitken Bronze Cup next year, which of course the winner of gets an auto entry to the following year's 24 Hours of Le Mans. AWA owner Andrew Wachitsko said to Sportscar 365, "Le Mans is the goal. If we can win the Bronze Cup next year, then we do Le Mans in 2025. We're going to try our best. We'll see." Now, considering the large steps forward that this team has taken, especially since making the step up to the WeatherTech Championship, that actually includes winning this year's LMP3 title at the Rolex 24, I would not at all be surprised to see this team take another big step forward in the GTD class next year, and not only be competing for the Bob Aitken Bronze Cup, but I would not be surprised to see them competing for podiums as well. They have really shown themselves to be a professional and fast operation, and considering all the competition that I'm sure Corvette was considering to take on their entries next year, they weren't going to be settling for anything else but a top-notch team to race these cars. So now we know it will be Pratt Miller and AWA that are going to be competing with those new Corvettes in Imsa. And we also know all the dates of the races that those cars will be competing in. You can check out everything that you need to know about the 2024 schedule right here. Big shout out to all of the Patreon supporters. If you too want to support the show and get a little bit of behind the scenes look at Off in the S's, then you can head to patreon.com/offintheS's. Once again though, thanks for tuning in. I hope everyone has a great race weekend and doesn't go off in the S's.